My name is Yvonne Hutchison, and my birth date was April 4th, 1934. I was born in the hills west of West Fork, Arkansas.
And this interview is for the Farmington Oral History Project, and we just want to verify that we have your permission to use the interview.
You do indeed.
Thank you. Who are your parents?
My parents were Edgar and Zona Baker.
And who were your siblings?
I had one sister and four brothers. Buford, Bud, Vic, and Randall. Randy, we called him. And that's all of us, six kids.
And your sister?
Connie. Connie was the oldest of the family.
Okay, tell me about your family business.
We were raised on a farm. My dad always farmed. And in later years, we had quite a number of cattle that milking stock. So it was a busy place. Lots of chores always, gardening, field work, just home stuff to keep the six kids in school and laundry done and all that. So it was plenty to do.
What jobs did you ever work besides the chores at home? Did you ever work outside of the home?
Not while I was in high school. I married when I was but just before I started my senior year in high school. So I went ahead, though, and finished high school after that. And then I worked later on part-time for the farm training program. That was following the Second World War, of course, and they were all veterans. And then we had three children, and I was a home mother at that time, did not work away from home. And then in about 71, about the time we moved back to the Farmington area, I went to work at the university in the police department, and I worked there until I retired. It was about 30 years, right close to 30 years.
Tell me about how you ended up moving to the Farmington area and when you got here.
We were in West Fork, and my dad some way got acquainted with Mac Morton, who had been here always, I guess, and had been in the apple industry when that was a big thing here. And he moved here, we moved here, and brought our cattle with us. We had few, and Mr. Morton's farm was a dairy farm. And so we moved in the rent house and milked his cattle as well as our own. And during that time, we were there about 2.5 years or so. We kids, the younger kids, went to Walnut Grove School. It was still functioning at that time. And my older brother my sister was already away. She went away to college that year. And my older brother was just beginning high school in Farmington. So then, just following that, we moved to a farm just in the edge of Farmington, and all of us went to Farmington school that time.
Tell me what it was like going to school at Walnut Grove.
Going to school at Walnut Grove was different. I think we had 2 rooms dividing the classes, and it was, we had two different teachers, and while we were there, they tried to fix lunches, just like a big pot of soup or something, so we didn't have to deal with that. And it was a nice gesture. After that, the kids from there went to Prairie Grove High School. So that was, we had a good time there. That was good.
Tell me about what years it would have been that you went there. What years and what grades?
I think I began I want to say the fourth grade there. No, well, maybe fourth, I say for me. And so then by the time we moved to Farmington, I know I was in the sixth grade there. So it was just a fun. We made a lot of good friends there, and still have them to our time now. But we also went to church at the Walnut Grove little church there as well.
Tell me about your earliest memories of Farmington.
When we came to Farmington, it would have been about 40, I would say 46 or 6 or something like that. And there were about, let's see, 3 grocery stores, I believe, a post office, and it seems to me Stark Nurseries was Farmington at that time because it was big and so many people worked for them. So many families had worked for them for years, and they just were big here and as I remember, they leased lands from different farms and grew nursery stock on just kind of spotted all around the area. So had a big nursery shed right south of the town, and it was big business.
What are some of the other stores and businesses you remember in Farmington?
Besides the grocery stores, I'm trying to remember. Well, just right off, I'm not remembering any businesses per se.
Tell me about where you lived. You talked earlier where you lived. What community was that in? Is it the same place you live now?
When we moved to Farmington,
yes.
Here, when we first moved to Farmington and so forth, we lived east of where I live now. But so it was around for people who know some of the old families. The Hamblin families lived there, and it's right about a mile east of me now. But of course, my family, when we moved here, my mom and dad, we lived just well, I don't know how to explain it to anyone who wouldn't know the place, but kind of north, just across the creek from the Baptist Church and the Church of Christ, who are side by side. They're on the highway now, just to the north of it, across the little creek there, and the farm, I don't know. I think the people we leased it from maybe lived in Oklahoma, and I've forgotten their names. But
tell me what it was like coming to school at Farmington after you'd been at Walnut Grove. What was the school like, and how was it different?
Well, it was big compared to that, but we had the grade school, and that would have been up through the 6th, I guess, and then over in the high school, as I remember that, we had the junior high. They had the basement in that building, and so I think that's where our rooms were, mostly homerooms, and then the high school in the upper deck, and there was a big study hall, That's, I don't think, I'm trying to remember if they were doing lunches at that time, but that was also when they did the school lunches, that was in the basement area as well. And it was just the one high school. We had outdoor plumbing, so none of that modern stuff much, and we played all our sports were outside, of course. Basketball was on a dirt court, and basketball was actually the sport because football, our smaller schools, we just didn't know anything about football. That's why I don't care for it today. I don't know what they're supposed to be doing, so I just watch it for, I guess, to get them, see them knock each other around. That's about all I can tell about it.
Now, who were some of your classmates and friends then in Farmington schools?
Well, one of the first friends I made in moving here, and we also went to the little Walnut Grove School a year or so together, was Eva Mae Glenn. They were neighbors of ours, and Gerald Lewis, who was her cousin, but he was a close neighbor. And they were kind of my better friends, and then the Glens they were all cousins. A bunch of them lived in that area. And then in moving on over into Farmington, of course the Shelley kids lived there close to us, and the Garners. They were the Farmington areas where we were here. And then as we moved on over into Farmington, we were next door neighbors to the Wilsons, so Bill Wilson was in my class, and Barbara Jean Toney was a good friend who lived close. And at school, of course, there were various kids that lived not so close living to me, but went to school with me all the time.
Who were some of the teachers that you remember?
Oh, dearie. That's a hard one because I remember them all, but when I first went to school here in the 6th, I remember Mrs. Keen, Kehn, who are now friends, and their kids were all friends of ours. They had moved from the north here not long before, but she was my first grade teacher here in this school in Farmington. And then as we went on over into junior high, then of course we had various teachers, and it's hard for me to remember back. I remember the superintendent of the school, Ingalls Broyles, and then Fred Starr was out here for several years after I was here. And Mrs. Starr taught here in the elementary school. Their two sons, Joe Fred and John Larry, went to school out here with us. And, oh gee whiz, Mrs. Ferguson then was our superintendent later in high school there. And Mrs. Penn moved here. She was a coach. She was a dandy. And I'm having a little trouble just naming my teachers off. That sounds awful, but...
Well, tell me kind of what it was like going to school there. I mean, what was a school day like at Farmington?
Well, it was a good thing. It was always very much fun. I've always enjoyed school anyway, and there was plenty to do. I felt like we had teachers, good enough teachers that we had. Some of our teachers actually came out from Fayetteville because there were several whose husbands may have been in the university trying to finish school, and the wives worked around, taught, and Lila Grau was one of my very favorites. She was an excellent teacher, and I'm having a little trouble naming them off because
What was it like as a parent sending your kids went to school there? Let's talk about that.
this is after my children were in school there.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a good thing. By that time, the school had grown a lot, and they had, well, of course, sports that were big and had football and that kind of stuff. And the teaching staff we felt were good. They had more to offer the children by that time, more courses and so forth. And I just thought a time or two, they'd tried to, what's the word I'm thinking of? Consolidate into Fayetteville. We had a time of that and quite a bit of fighting about not wanting to go, which were able to win out and kept our school here. And it just worked out well because by that time the community had begun to grow and the school population was growing in the town, so naturally the schools were growing. And it was a good school. We just enjoyed having the kids in a smaller school. We'd been early on when our children had just begun school. We were in Fayetteville and we had a good experience there, but soon we had moved away. And I don't know, we just enjoyed the small school. Maybe it was because we had grown up in a smaller setting.
Who were some of the people, but you've mentioned some, but who are some of the other people you met from Farmington area that you got to know real well?
Oh gosh, well, the Oxford kids were good friends of mine, and I was at their home a lot and back and forth. And Judy Johnson, by that time we had new families moving in too, and so Judy was one of my good friends, and her family lived down Goose Creek area, Goose Creek Road, and then the kids from the other communities that had consolidated to come in at that time, the Highland community kids were over here, and Savoy and the outlying smaller areas out there. So lots of the kids there were just good friends.
When you were growing up as a kid in the Farmington area and before then, what were some of the things that you and your friends would do for fun?
Oh, skating was kind of big by that time. I was never any good, but I had friends who were. And so we did go skating parties and so forth. We had a lot of church activities, and I was always involved. We were always involved in the church, and had swimming. I grew up on a creek. We always had a creek. I never learned to swim. Scared to death. I didn't want to get the water any higher than my shoulders, and I was assured I'd never learn to swim with my head and shoulders out of the water, so I didn't. But all my brothers could swim by the time they were 3 years old, So I was a bummer there. But I can't really think of what we did in particular. Spent a lot of time together, just goofing off, I guess, piddling.
When you were a kid, what would your parents do and their friends do for fun?
Apart from visiting, they weren't movie goers. They weren't, they did love their neighbor friends and just enjoyed visiting. And of course my grandmother was still living, Grandmother Baker. So on Sunday afternoons, a lot of times the folks would go there to see her. And, I don't know, they were such pleasant people. They had family to spend time with, and uh, never any time of just wondering what to do for fun, I guess.
What are some things you've done over the years in Farmington area for fun? I mean, what kind of social activities or events have you gone to?
Oh, we went to everything that was to. They began to in earlier years. They began to bring movies to the school, and you could, at night, show them at night, so you could go to those, and then of course we were close enough to Fayetteville to go to movies along, and parties at people's homes, and just I don't remember any particular things other than just normal play-arounds, I guess.
Did you ever go to any of those annual fireman breakfast events they would have in town? And if so,
Oh,
what do
yeah.
you remember about them?
Well, those were in more later years. Yeah, we went to most of the. Are you talking about the yearly fire? Oh, those are good. Good place to go have breakfast and visit with people. Maybe you didn't see other times, but you saw a lot of them there. Any activity you'd go to like that, you'd see people that you might not run into very often, and that was good.
What about the when the community got its senior center and they started meeting? Did you ever go to any of those meetings or any of those events?
At the beginning of that, I was still working, and I didn't go to regularly to the senior center, but they had special activities that we would be interested in going to. And then, of course, by now, Dale has been deceased 11 years, so I've done a lot of stuff, and I retired in 98, and so I've done more volunteering. I play on Wednesday morning every week for some of the people wanted to sing some gospel and look at a book, so we have some old hymnals and have a pretty good little bunch of people who like to come and sing, and we do that. And then I play once a month. We play Name That Tune, and so I'm the one who has to play the piano because I can. I know lots of songs, all kinds. So you mix them up as best you can to try to, have some that all the people who want to play might know, but you try to do it so that from all eras, so they don't all like the same kind of music, or as they have during their lifetime they have it. So they may not be acquainted with country music as much as they are show tune type stuff. So you have to be able to play a lot of different things, and they have a lot of fun with that game.
How important do you think that is to have that center there for stuff for people to do?
The center has been a real great thing, and there are people who, and I'm not one of them because I have plenty to do to keep me busy all the time, but there are people who go when it opens in the mornings and leaves when it closes in the evenings, because it's been a real blessing to them. If they have maybe some of them don't have much family, live alone, and they like to be with people. And some of them like to play, like one day in the mornings, they have music come in. So people like to dance, go, and they can dance while the music's going. And then in the afternoons, 2 afternoons a week now, they play pitch, and a lot of people love to play pitch. So some of them just come for those specific things. it's been a really great thing for a lot of people.
Uh, Tell me about your family and its musical traditions. I know you've.
Well, I grew up with a real sense of music on, especially my mother's family. They were Richardsons, and her dad taught singing schools, and just loved music, and so all her siblings and she sang. And not many of them that I knew did musical instruments. My dad's family were quite musical, and Daddy could play. He played the banjo, and he played a little bit on chording on the piano or the organ. It would have been then. And one of his brothers played the violin. And then it came on down to my siblings, and most of us were pretty musical. Could have been if we'd applied ourselves well. And my sisters sang in college choirs and those kind of things, and played the piano some. But I played the piano, and have a brother or two that could. They don't think they can play the guitar, but they could have if they really wanted to sit in with others and play. And it's just been, and then my older brother actually, after retiring from the Navy and having his children already growing up, he decided to learn to play the violin. So he started lessons, I think, when he was 58, and amazingly, he was determined to play and played quite well. And the other boys thought they could plunk around, but they were bashful enough they didn't want to do it in front of a crowd much, I guess. So.
What about your husband and kids? Did
Well,
they play
my
any?
husband played the guitar somewhat, and he loved to sing. And then my oldest daughter, she could sing quite well, had a sweet voice, but she didn't think she was that musical. And my second daughter just took the piano and kind of ran with it because she just loved it. It was just made for her. And then my son came along, and he decided to play the guitar, and so he's pretty well known around here as a good guitarist and has played in Fayetteville area all along. People used to wonder, why don't you go to Nashville and get on the road? And he said, I've been around too many people that are on the road, and I know right now it's not cut out. I wasn't cut out to be on the road, so that part didn't interest him. But he said one time, Mom, I would do this if they paid me nothing. But he pretty well made his living at it for a long time. And now he still does it some, but not as much as in earlier years. And he's raising children, so he's busy. But he also works at kind of construction, not like us in building homes, but inside stuff for people. Works with decorators quite a bit, so when they have things they need done, they call him.
Let's talk about the changes you've noticed over the years in Farmington. It's gone from this sleepy little uh, two-lane dirt road to now a big town, a much bigger town. So, what do
Much
you
bigger.
remember the changes over the years?
Much, much bigger. The population is the thing that began, and with that comes home building. And so right now, I saw just this week that we have 3 or 4, uh, uh, well, what's the word I want to use for it? Housing developments that are begun. One just to the east of me here ways that will have about 139 lots in it, and I bet right now they've begun the framing and have some of them all pretty nearly finished. about 40, be close to 40 of them already going all at once. And it just, in no time, it's just springs up like that all around. Many, of course, our roads have gotten blacktopped, and in fact, I heard Farmington say the other day they blacktopped the last two streets within their city limits, and that means they're all. That doesn't take in my dirt road out here in front of my house, but I'm not in the city limits quite yet either. But it's amazing the population that shows by the school enrollment every year. Just is up so much, especially now that you have a choice of where you want to go to school, so you don't have to go within your city limits. And we have people that come from other areas that want to bring their children here to school. So I guess that speaks well.
Are you able to do a lot of your shopping here, or most of it here in town?
Just no. Well, now we have the Walmart neighborhood market here, so that helps with the groceries, grocery shopping, and we have dollar stores or Dollar General, I guess it is, and then we have a dollar store as well. Several drive-in food chain things, and a restaurant, Mexican restaurant, and just plenty of places for that type of eating, and nothing like clothing stores or any of that type thing, which I guess that'll come before long if it keeps going. But having well, we've always had some nice little grocery stores from early on, just small grocery stores. But I guess the Walmart store is the biggest one we've had. So,
what are some stories you can remember over the years that you think would be interesting to share?
Oh my goodness, I had thought about that one for a long time. Oh gosh, I. Oh my goodness, I just I can't. I know a lot of them, but it'd be hard to. I'd have to pass on that one right now.
If you had to tell somebody that you'd never met, who had never been to Farmington, you had to tell them about your town of Farmington, what would you tell them?
I would say that it is a place really where you can find a place that fits you, because I think it's a welcoming place. We have, as far as churches are concerned, we have several different denominations and so forth. The school is I think it's a very embracing place for the children of all ages, it seems to be. And our staff, I only hear now because my children are all long gone from high school. But it seems to be a good school, and our staff, from what I just hear now mostly. But I think it's a place where there are things that you can get involved in if you want to be a part of the community, and would be embraced here.
Complete this sentence for me. My favorite thing about Farmington is.
Oh my sakes! That I hope they next time they have an annexation, they'll get me. I'm just in a little county area right here between Prairie Grove and Farmington, so I figure the next annexation will get us one way or the other. which would be good. Um, but as far as favorite place, I go to church and to the senior center and those things in Farmington. So those are two of the things that I'm most, uh, I guess you could say, acquainted with. They're in town now. Besides just regular old friends, seeing them around. That's good.